So, this is Bloodstained, Ritual of Night. We are beginning the run with a short explanation on a few glitches. The most prominent one we will be using for a lot of different glitches because we combine them a lot is ability to suspend the game anywhere, since the game has a system of creating temporary save files whenever we enter the room. However, for some reason, if there is any marker on the map and we bring up the map, the game makes a temporary save anyway, which restarts everything, player state, enemies, HP values, everything except for player's position, which allows us to set up a few particular glitches. And right now that we start the run, we have to pick up a mandatory chest that thankfully contains one of the items that we also need for the speedrun, which is Kung Fu boots. Those boots allow us to perform one specific technique, a spin kick, which, if we do that in the air, it allows us to do infinite jumps in two ways. We can either cancel the animation of the jump with a directional shard that we just pick up from the enemy, and we can also do it by suspending the game mid-air and getting a jump. And right now we saw Bane getting the out of bounds on the first try, because the game is not really good at calculating your position when you are colliding with slopes. And in that save room, there is a slope that we can spin kick into. And by suspending the game at the correct moment, we can enter the geometry. And one of the states of the character is default idle animation. By forcing this animation by suspending the game, we can cause the character to zip up to the nearest free space that it has no collision, which would be top of the room. Now, another specific thing that we have to look out for is how the game is constructed in terms of the map. If you look at the game map, it looks roughly the same as like the physical map is roughly the same as the map you can see on the screen. But there is a really weird system of getting into the rooms, since a room box that loads your next destination is located right before you enter the screen transition. So what we do in the speedrun very often is walking into the room box, but not walking out of the room. Instead, we then get out of bounds and enter the next room from the side that we are not supposed to. What you can see on the screen now is we are suspending the game constantly to get a specific shard from the Jula hammer, since this one will be required for us to kill more difficult enemies, mostly the last boss. And I guess this also needs some explanation. Shards are basically a skill system in the game. There are a few types of shards. We have ones that we use instantly, which is the one we are going for right now. There are directional shards that require for us to use at least on the controller, the right analog stick to first aim the spell and then use it. There are also passive shards and shards that are specific to movement. Those we don't really worry that much about because we have all the movement we need. And now, ahead of time, I will explain how swap casting works, because we do want to have multiple shards for the usable slot, We already have one. We got it from the very first enemy in the game, which was this bouncing water ball. And now we need a head flail from the enemy we are farming right now. And there comes up another glitch, which allows us to swap a shard during the animation of the previous one. And doing so can have multiple of different effects. But what we are getting is basically reusing the flail very often, faster than we are able to normally, as well as this flail only consumes MP upon casting, not when the flail itself flies out, which means we will be able to use it infinitely, only needing MP on the very first cast. So currently we are not really lucky with the drops. And just as I said that we got the Bane got the head flail, we are also picking up gold on the way. Gold routing is really tight in this run because we want really two things. We want items that will allow us to raise our intelligence stat a little bit, because this is what causes us to deal the most damage. Also, mana potions, but that I will explain right after. I will explain what happened now. We just skipped the very first tutorial boss of the game. This is one of the instances where the map isn't exactly accurate, because there are two rooms seemingly in the same place, but there is one room has a post-boss version of it, and one that contains a boss fight. If we enter the room normally, we are entering a boss fight. However, if we enter the room from the top instead, we can just enter straight to the post-boss version of the same room. Normally, after the boss fight, they are just interchanged with each other. So you get to that room by normally entering a screen transition. Instead, we just got into the room the illegal way, so out of bounds. We are still picking up some chests on the way that either contain valuable items or items that raise our intelligence. And another important thing, since we have two ways of getting infinite jumps, one is suspend jumping, which is just suspending the game midair. The other one is by interrupting the animation with the directional shard. The technique with interrupting the animation has one little problem, which is mana consumption. Every single time we cast, or rather use the spin kick, it consumes MP. And later in the game, you will see that this is quite problematic, because we have to do this a lot. But this is what all the money and item routing is for. We want to get as much mana potions as possible. Also, I think Bane will get 1 HP potion for safety. But this is like strictly marathon safety. We mostly care about MP because this is what we need to actually get to the end of the game. Now we have just some damage boosting through the enemies. And we are entering the garden, which is... For now, we just pass through it, just killing one enemy on the way. We choose this specific spot because you might have noticed that there was a Black Knight behind us. Instead, we do it in this place because we are also killing one other enemy at the same time. This is just extra XP. We are not actually farming XP, we are farming a shard from the Black Knight. But this single enemy that we kill will also allow us for one extra level up, which is a tiny bit of stats. But with the sheer amount of damage we have to do, even a single point of damage per tick will actually do a lot in the last boss fight. And this is another place where we have to suspend the game and farm a lot of times to actually get the shard. Because the shard from the Black Knight is a very specific directional shard that has a continuous casting animation until we break out of it, either by getting damaged or by canceling it ourselves. This just maximizes our DPS with the flail, because this will cause it to just stay on the screen behind us, and it will be cast continuously. So this is basically a infinite source of damage once we have mana for one initial cast of the flail itself.
中断データ読み込みのために、リオスティック押し込みでのメニュー開閉ですかね。これをやって、しかし、ちょっと待って、ちょっと待って。
これ本当にやばいこれ。
過去最悪レベルじゃないですか、このドロップのなさは。
冗談抜きの最悪ですね、これ。
いやー、えげつないですね。これは、本番の魔物は、ドロップガチャに潜んでいたということですが。
これだけは引きたくなかった。
This, unfortunately, is not a very likely run because it wasn't. It took a lot of tries to get the shard from the Jula Hammer as well as now from the Black Knight. But now that we've got it, we are missing only one shard that we need to complete the game really fast. Under normal circumstances, the shard we would get is quite useless, but now that we can abuse the infinite jumping to just cross the gap that we normally would need two other locations to get to, we can go to yet another location that has a specific enemy. That specific enemy is a chair mimic. Chairs in this game are pretty much broken. They work in a really weird way. When you start sitting on a chair, it puts you in a state where player's position is locked, so you cannot move, and it turns off the collision. Why does it do that? I don't know, they programmed the game this way. But getting a shard from the chair mimic allows us to place chairs anywhere, which is perfect, because now we will be able to take the chairs where we actually need them. And we just picked up a shard that gives us a specific ability. Now we have a quick menu for swapping out gears, which we will use for really fast swap casting. This just saves a lot of in-game time. And also real time, because we don't have to go through the entire equipment menu to actually change stuff. Instead, we are just pressing one button to open the menu, second to swap it to a different gear, and this time, thankfully, we've got the chair shard really quickly. And we used a waystone to get back to the hub. This by itself is not that much faster. Actually, you would get back into the spot we need to get to a bit faster if you walked. However, we need to craft some stuff, upgrade shards, and spend our money on mana potions. Because without that, we wouldn't be able to pass through the next area. So now we are just buying all the necessary stuff. And we will be on our way to the gardens again. Right after we've got our stuff. We also picked up a teleportation room right before the place we need to go to. And now we are performing another glitch, which we call Squid Menu, which refers to the monster codex having its first entry as a Siyama, which is a squid monster. What we are doing is we are doing a lot of different animations at the same time, causing the game to let us open the menu while we are in the middle of the animation. So what it lets us do is having a menu open while we have control over the game. Now you can see that we are using a lot of MP, and we are just flying through the collision anywhere we want. And this is caused by the chair being broken, and the Iron Maiden enemy, or rather a trap, breaking us out of the sitting animation, which unlocks our position, but it doesn't clear the no-clip state we have from the chair, which means that right now, until we suspend the game or enter a very specific cutscene, there are a few that will break that state. We don't have collision at all, so we have to be really careful about falling through the floor where we don't want to be. And I think Bana entered a wrong screen transition, so we'll get the entire flying through the map without collision glitch again. And we need it in this specific spot, because normally if you want to enter the train station, we need a train pass. That train pass is in completely different location, and we do not have time to go and access it, let alone beat the boss itself. So we just ignore the collision in the game entirely and enter the train from out of bounds and just skip the gate. And one of the cutscenes that will clear the no clip state that we have is one that gets us into the train itself. Are we entering another Squid Menu? Yes. Now, this is taking several attempts. We cannot really see too much into the screen itself, but you have to be on the lookout for really not falling through the floor, or rather the boundaries of the room itself. And we also want to catch the specific room boxes to enter all of the rooms correctly, which is quite difficult when the only thing you can refer to is the map. And the map on the screen, as you can see, is like flipping left and right, because we change menus. But also, the map only really shows you where the collision is, looking at your marker on the map. If you want to know where the boundaries of the room are, that you really have to know yourself and feel around. And as you can see, we want to catch a room box, and usually, because we go in most rooms, we go from left to right. If the room box is on the right, we want to exit this room on the left side instead. So this way, we will start at the end of the room where we want to get, instead of at the start. So now we finally got to the train station itself. So we just have to pass the gate, and we will board the train. And what we're doing right now is Bana has to feel around and get to the cutscene trigger while in the menu, because we really need to retain the Squid Menu, which will allow us to move around during cutscenes. This is its most important property, really, because right after the train, there is the most important room we have to move around for, but it starts with a cutscene, and if we did not have a ability to move around, we would just fall through the floor and basically softlock the game. But having the Squid Menu, we can actually move around and enter a very specific room box that is placed out of bounds but was left behind. Also, right now, even though we can't really see the screen, Bana is placing the chair at a very specific spot to enter the no clips tight again. In this fight, I guess you can call it a boss fight, but we are not really fighting the Glutton train. Since we are in the no clip state and not really in position to fight, we just let Zangetsu take care of the boss, and we just fall through the floor continuously on the side, because this room doesn't have any connections. Falling through the floor out of the boundaries of the room itself will set us back to the position we see Miriam appearing, which is roughly above the door to the boss fight itself. And now that the boss is killed, we are transported to the next room, and here we need Squid Menu to move to that cutscene. And this is another instance of the map not being as precise as it could possibly be, because two last locations in the game, the Behemoth Lair and the Ice Tomb, or if I remember correctly, it was the Glacial Tomb, are connected to the room right after the train yard. And now we just have entered the last location of the game through out of bounds. And we sadly have to go through the entire location in out of bounds state, because it requires us different endgame shards that we didn't have time to get. And now we are starting the last boss fight with part 1, at least, Dominic. And as you can see, there are flies flying around and just causing damage constantly. Thankfully, while the flies deal a lot of damage themselves, they also deal quite a lot of stagger damage that the player doesn't normally see. But Dominic is very prone to flinching when damaged, and we can just lock her in a single place without her being able to move. And now we are entering phase 2. Bile itself. This is really the only heavy instance of RNG in the game that really wages on what time we get. Because right now we've got we have Dominic appear on the green head. As far as I know, this is a good outcome. You really don't want Dominic to appear on the cat head, because cat is usually the slowest one and has the worst cycles. But the head that the Dominic appears on is the only one that will really take damage that counts towards killing the boss. And right now it's just avoiding damage and damaging the right head. I saw Bane popping the health potion, so the safety strats are paying off, because we are severely underleveled entering this boss fight. And depending on the attack, Bile could take us out in 2 hits, with some attacks on 3 hits. And the time is close. This is time. The big bad evil guy is defeated, and that is the end of the run. Again, congratulations to the runner. This has been a run that was very unlucky on the RNG, because we had to farm for shards for a very long time. And despite few complications, that was still a really good run. So again, congratulations to Bane, because this category is really difficult. There are only a few people that have ever completed it. And as far as I am aware, Bane is the only person who has trained this category enough to actually show it in a marathon setting, which is a very impressive feat, considering just how many either close to frame perfect inputs it requires, and how much precision this run takes to actually be completed. And now we just have a resolution of the story. We have defeated the big bad evil guy. The world has come to peace. And that is the end of the game. So right now, you can also hear the hype on the Japanese side. And if you have noticed the game being somewhat familiar, that is because it was made by Iga, the guy behind Castlevania games, a lot of them. Anyway, thank you for watching. See ya.